Rebellious curiosity. If you've been following me, you know exactly what I mean when I say that. If you haven't or you are new to my page, welcome. I invite you to go to the top of my profile and you'll be able to see a video where I explain in 60 seconds what it's about. I want to share with you my own journey now to being rebelliously curious, and I want to invite you to take part in it, not just in my story, but your own story. Last weekend, and I know some people may be watching this way into the future, so let's just say a weekend, I was invited to an award ceremony. I was a finalist for the Women's Agenda Setter of 2022. I didn't win, but my goodness, I was in awe of the brilliance that surrounded the room and the diversity of those in the room. Acknowledging it was celebrating women as one of many sustainable goals to creating a more just, equal, diverse and inclusive world. So I honor the work that Women's Agenda and every other, establishment is doing to create a more equal world. Now, what happened was a very dear friend of mine, Stacey Packer, who's helping me with all things life and all things strategy, kind of guided me to bring my daughter along so that she could just witness what it is I do and to witness other forms of brilliance. I naturally felt bad, so I decided to bring my son along. So they both missed parts of school to attend this. But this for me is life lessons. I was willing to make that sacrifice for them to be there. At first I was concerned, but what if I don't win? And through my coach, Claire Obade, who helps me with just understanding my purpose and integrating with it, the good, the not so good, kind of had me realize that I need to detach from the notion of winning the award, but just being in the space of celebrating brilliance and celebrating diversity. But what would happen at the end of the event turns out to be even more powerful than what I experienced in the event. And I guess brings me back to the work I do, because when I want to talk about my agenda, it's not necessarily really good like dinner table conversation, even that awkward, you're walking in workplaces kind of conversation. However, when I do bring it up, I tend to have about 70% lean in and want to hear more or share parts of their story. My agenda is to raise the vibration on acknowledging and healing our individual and collective trauma. Now that's a mouthful, and I'll maybe talk about that a different day, but I do that in very many different means, whether it's keynote speaking, whether it's workshops, whether it's facilitating, challenging moments within projects. I find ways of tapping into pain points to figure out how we can transmute it to power. So that's my agenda. But the agenda I had on the day of this award ceremony was with my soon-to-be 9-year-old son, who seems to be featuring in everything. So we must have made a pact at some point in our lives. As he sat in that room and they were announcing all the different awards and contributions that majority of the women were making, he found himself feeling a certain way. And we only found out what that was when he got home, when his big sister asked him, "What did you think of the award ceremony?" He said, "Yeah, it was really good. However, there were times when it felt like they were making men sound stupid." Now, remember, I'm big on language, so his vocabulary is still limited. And when he means by stupid, just kind of like not contributing. So I don't want to paraphrase his words, because he did use that word. And he said, and I know sometimes men can get things wrong, but he used the word stupid, but it just didn't feel good. And this is where I get curious. Curious in the sense that I want to know more. Now, I had to do my best not to overly interrogate him, but I wanted to understand where he was coming from. And then what I needed to do was to become his 9-year-old ears in this place where we were celebrating women. And that was not his issue at all, because come on, I'm his mama. He knows exactly we should be celebrating everybody regardless of gender. But it was the fact that there were some conversations, there were maybe some speeches, maybe there were some introductions where there was a big emphasis on the role men have played in society. Now you're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to be wondering, where's Yemi going with this? And this is the rebellious side. We should not be here trying to right the wrongs of the world by making a certain or another group feel wrong. I will have failed even though I have no problem in failing, but I would have created further injustice if my work suggests that I'm to make another group feel inferior. I don't have all the answers, but how we do the work in fighting for a just, equal, diverse, and inclusive world is just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the work we actually do. Yes, I appreciate an award ceremony might not be what's needed for young kids or young boys or those who are transgender or non-binary. I appreciate that. I acknowledge that we need intimate groups to support those who have never had a voice or haven't been heard at all. I get that. But how we do it becomes really important. So if I get on stage and I want to talk about raising the voices of people of color, raising the voices of women, transgender, any marginalized group in society, it is important I try to do that standing on its own feet without having to step on others. Because remember, even though, and I agree that with this statement, even though there is major power disparity and a lot of it appears to sit in the hands of white men, don't forget what we have going on elsewhere in the world. Whether it's Iran, other parts of the world that I won't even know, whether it's in parts of Africa. The minute we start to give an inconclusive story, or we start to say things as if they are the only truth and there's nothing else around it, we are feeding the minds of young people, those who are still impressionable by other people's opinions, to think that they are not enough. I don't even think I've made sense to me in what I'm saying, but I needed to say it out so that those who are in the position to hear me, hear me. When you are fighting for justices that are relevant to you, be mindful of who is listening. And I promise you, if you are an influencer, if you are a thought leader, if you are someone who is making change, everybody's hearing you. Figure out how we do it. This is exactly why my agenda is about cleaning our trauma. Because if I, who had her voice taken, who had her power taken through the abuse of an uncle, if I decided that every man in the world was someone I should be fearful of, or someone who needed to pay back for the sins of my uncle, we would be 100% fucked. Yes, I have a potty mouth. I'm gonna need you to hold space for me as I do that right now. We would be. But I've had to clean my trauma to separate those that do abuse power and those that don't. Because when we give blanket statements to a group is when we repeat history again. So how we do the work is going to be really important. Now, I'm Yemi Penn, so you know I had to do the work of my son there and then, because according to another good friend who's featured on my documentaries, Kerry Howard, ways in which we can prevent trauma is by actually responding with empathy within the first 6 hours in which it's happened. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that what my son heard or someone did something to him, because no one did anything to anybody. He perceived some words in a way his 9-year-old brain could. And the story he left to take with himself is that men are stupid. Ooh. And I had to do the work to explain that that's not what was being told, but I can understand how he got that. However, let me explain what's been happening in the world today and the reason why we fight for the voices of women. We fight for the voices of transgender men and women, non-binary. Why we fight for the voices of Black and Indigenous people of color. There's a lot in all of this, but I'm keen to know where your level of curiosity has gone. Yes, you might have felt a little bit of frustration, but where is your level of curiosity in what I've just shared? My invitation is a minimum, my call to action. How you do the work in creating a just, equal, diverse, and inclusive work is as important and powerful as what you do. Stay curious, stay rebellious, but stay compassionate.